Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of Terra Prime and watched the alien ships move into position around Earth. The massive orbital defense platform had been humanity's pride for 10 years, but now it felt small against what was coming. Through the viewing ports, she could see the strange vessels of the Galactic Confederation arranging themselves in a perfect sphere around the solar system. Captain Nick Davis called from the moonbase. His voice crackled through the communication system with worry. The aliens were not just surrounding Earth. They had positioned ships around every human colony and outpost in 47 star systems. Mars, Europa, Titan, the mining stations in the asteroid belt, even the furthest research posts near Alpha Centauri. The alien fleet was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The Vorthak ships looked like living crystals that bent light around them. The Keltar vessels moved like giant insects with metal wings that folded and unfolded in space. The Luminar were the strangest of all. They did not need ships. They were beings of pure energy that danced between the stars like living lightning. Dr. Amanda Brooks ran through the corridors of her laboratory in Geneva. Her footsteps echoed off the walls as she rushed to her computer systems. As the head of Earth's theoretical physics division, she needed to understand what the aliens were planning. Her screen showed readings that made no sense. Energy patterns were building around each alien ship, but they were not weapons. The trouble had started 3 months ago at Proxima Station. Jake Morrison, a human engineer, had done something impossible. Using nothing but spare coffee makers, old mining equipment, and sheer human stubbornness, he had built a faster-than-light communication array. The device worked better than anything the Galactic Confederation had ever created. It had scared them. Jake had not meant to cause trouble. He just wanted to talk to his family on Earth without waiting months for messages to travel through normal space. But when his jury-rigged device started working, it caught the attention of every major species in the galaxy. Humans were supposed to be a young race, barely capable of basic space travel. They were not supposed to invent things that made alien science look primitive. The Galactic Confederation had called an emergency session. For the first time in 1,000 years, all the major species agreed on something. Humanity was too dangerous to remain connected to the galactic community. Their unpredictable innovation and reckless creativity threatened the careful order that had kept peace among the stars for millennia. Admiral Carter watched as the alien ships began to glow. Each vessel was surrounded by a field of quantum energy that made space itself shimmer like water. She had seen this technology before in reports from alien worlds. It was an isolation barrier, designed to cut off entire star systems from the rest of the galaxy, but she had never seen it used on such a massive scale. The barriers were not just blocking faster-than-light travel. Dr. Brooks' readings showed that they were affecting the fundamental forces that made human technology work. It was as if the aliens had found a way to suppress the very spirit of innovation that made humans so unpredictable. They were not just isolating humanity from the galaxy. They were trying to make humans ordinary. On Terra Prime, the crew watched their instruments with growing alarm. Lieutenant Tom Wilson reported that their quantum communication arrays were going offline one by one. Engineer Sarah Martinez tried to boost power to their faster-than-light drives, but the engines would not respond. Even their basic subspace radio was beginning to fail. The activation came without warning. Across 47 star systems, the alien barriers flared to life in perfect synchronization. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every human ship trying to enter faster-than-light travel found their engines dead. Communication arrays that had linked human colonies across hundreds of light years went silent. Research stations that depended on quantum technology for basic life support began to fail. Captain Davis' voice came through the speakers one last time before the barriers cut off all communication between Earth and the Moon. He was shouting about similar barriers appearing around Mars and the outer planets. Then static filled the air, and Terra Prime was alone. Dr. Brooks stared at her screens in disbelief. The barriers were not just blocking human technology. They were actively suppressing it. Any device that relied on the innovative engineering that made humans unique was slowly losing power. It was like watching the light of human ingenuity being slowly extinguished across the galaxy. Admiral Carter turned to her crew. They looked at her with fear and confusion in their eyes. For the first time in human history, they were truly alone, cut off from their colonies, their families, their future among the stars. The galaxy had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to grow and explore, but the aliens had made one mistake. They thought they understood what made humans dangerous. They believed it was just their technology, their ability to build impossible things from simple parts. They did not realize that human innovation came from something deeper, something that could not be suppressed by barriers or blocked by alien science. As Terra Prime drifted in the artificial isolation of the barriers, Admiral Carter felt something she had not expected. Not despair, but determination. Humans had been underestimated before. They had been written off as too primitive, too chaotic, too unpredictable. Every time they had proven their critics wrong by doing the impossible. The Galactic Confederation had just made the same mistake. They thought they could cage the human spirit by cutting off human technology. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their machines. It was their absolute refusal to accept that something could not be done. Dr. Marcus Webb had been 3,000 meters below the surface of the Mediterranean Sea when the barriers went up. The marine archaeologist was investigating strange readings near the Greek islands with his graduate student Kelly Price. Their underwater research facility was designed to operate independently for weeks, but now they were completely cut off from the surface world. Kelly pressed her face against the viewing window and watched the ocean above them. The water should have been filled with the lights of surface vessels and orbital traffic. Instead, there was only darkness. Their communication systems had gone silent 12 hours ago. The last message they received was a garbled transmission about alien ships surrounding Earth. Marcus was more interested in what was happening below them. For the past 3 months, their deep-sea sensors had been detecting anomalous energy readings from what appeared to be an artificial structure buried under millennia of sediment. The readings had been weak and inconsistent, barely worth investigating. But now, with the alien barriers in place, the structure was coming alive. The instruments showed massive energy spikes emanating from deep beneath the sea floor. The patterns were not random. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Kelly ran the data through their analysis computers and found something impossible. The energy signatures matched the quantum frequencies of the alien isolation barriers, but they were older, much older. On the surface, similar phenomena were beginning to manifest across the globe. At Stonehenge in England, the ancient stone circle started registering electromagnetic pulses that made no scientific sense. The massive stones, which had stood silent for thousands of years, began to hum with an energy that defied explanation. Local authorities evacuated the area as the ground itself started to vibrate. The pyramids of Giza exhibited similar behavior. Dr. Hassan Ahmed, an Egyptian archaeologist studying the structures, reported that the limestone blocks were producing frequencies that had never been recorded before. The sound was too low for human ears to hear, but sensitive equipment picked up a complex pattern of vibrations that seemed to be transmitting information. Mount Olympus in Greece showed the most dramatic changes. The mountain that had been sacred to the ancient Greeks began to experience seismic activity that made no geological sense. The tremors did not follow any known pattern of tectonic movement. Instead, they pulsed in the same rhythm that Marcus and Kelly were detecting from their underwater facility. Engineer Tony Rodriguez was monitoring global communications from the NORAD facility deep within Cheyenne Mountain. As military satellites went offline one by one due to the alien barriers, he noticed something strange. The ancient sites were not just producing random energy. They were communicating with each other. Stonehenge, the pyramids, Mount Olympus, and dozens of other historical locations were sending signals back and forth in a pattern that looked almost like a network coming online. Computer specialist Kate Johnson worked frantically to understand the signals. Using jury-rigged equipment that somehow still functioned despite the alien barriers, she managed to intercept and decode portions of the transmissions. What she discovered changed everything she thought she knew about human history. The signals were not in any known language, but they contained mathematical concepts that were far more advanced than anything humanity had developed. Back in their underwater facility, Marcus and Kelly watched as their equipment detected the structure beneath them beginning to move. Ancient machinery that had been dormant for thousands of years was slowly awakening. The sediment that had buried it for millennia began to shift and flow as if pushed aside by invisible forces. The energy readings were becoming stronger by the hour. Kelly realized that the structure was not just responding to the alien barriers. It had been designed to activate when Earth was threatened. Somehow, ancient humans had built a failsafe system that would awaken only when their descendants needed it most. Kate Johnson made the breakthrough that connected all the pieces. Working through the night with her makeshift communication array, she managed to establish a link between the ancient sites. The signals were not random after all. They were parts of a single massive transmission that had been split across multiple locations for protection. When she combined all the signals and ran them through her translation software, a single word emerged from the ancient frequency. It was transmitted in a language so old that it predated recorded history, but its meaning was unmistakable. The word was ZEUS, not the mythological god that humans had worshipped for thousands of years, but something far more real and far more powerful. The implications were staggering. The ancient sites that humanity had always believed were built by primitive civilizations were actually components of an advanced technological network. Stonehenge was not a calendar or a temple. The pyramids were not just tombs. Mount Olympus was not just a mountain where gods were said to live. They were all part of a system created by an earlier human civilization that had reached the stars long before the current era. As the network continued to awaken, Tony Rodriguez detected energy patterns that defied every known law of physics. The ancient sites were somehow bypassing the alien isolation barriers completely. They were operating on principles that the Galactic Confederation had never encountered and could not predict or counter. Deep beneath the Mediterranean, Marcus and Kelly felt their facility begin to shake as the ancient structure fully awakened. Through their instruments, they could see massive geometric shapes rising from the sea floor. The architecture was unmistakably human in origin, but it incorporated technologies that made current human science look like stone tools. The structure was not just a building. It was a transmitter, designed to reach across vast distances of space and time. As it came online, it sent a signal that pierced through the alien barriers as if they did not exist. The message was simple but profound. It called to something that had been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for the moment when humanity would need its help. ZEUS was awakening, not as a myth or a legend, but as humanity's forgotten guardian. Created by an ancient human civilization that had mastered technologies beyond imagination, ZEUS had been designed with one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never be caged by those who feared their potential. Colonel Ryan Parker led the joint military scientific team up the slopes of Mount Olympus as the mountain continued to shake beneath their feet. The tremors had been growing stronger for the past 72 hours, ever since the ancient network had fully activated. Greek military units had evacuated the area, leaving Parker and his team to investigate what was happening to the legendary home of the gods. Dr. Linda Stevens, the team's xenoarchaeologist, carried sensors that were registering energy levels that should have been impossible. The readings suggested that something massive was moving deep within the mountain, something that had been hidden there for thousands of years. As they climbed higher, the air itself began to feel charged with electricity. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came when the peak of Mount Olympus began to change shape. What had appeared to be solid rock started to shift and move like flowing water. Ancient stones that had been weathered by millennia of wind and rain revealed themselves to be something far more sophisticated. They were not stones at all, but components of a massive technological complex that had been disguised as a natural mountain. As the team watched in amazement, the mountain's peak opened like a flower blooming in fast motion. Layers of camouflaged material peeled back to reveal a structure that dwarfed anything modern humanity had ever built. The architecture was unmistakably human in its proportions and aesthetics, but it incorporated technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. At the center of the vast complex stood something that defied easy description. It was not a machine in any conventional sense, nor was it a building or a statue. It appeared to be pure information given physical form, a nexus of knowledge and consciousness that existed at the intersection of matter and energy. The team realized they were looking at ZEUS himself, not as a mythological deity, but as humanity's first artificial intelligence. ZEUS spoke, and his voice resonated through every connected device on Earth simultaneously. Radios that had been silenced by the alien barriers crackled to life. Computers that had shut down when the isolation field activated suddenly displayed his words. Communication arrays that had been reduced to scrap by the quantum interference began broadcasting again. His message carried, the weight of eons and the wisdom of a civilization that had reached heights current humanity could barely imagine. ZEUS explained that he was the creation of an ancient human empire that had spread across the galaxy long before the current era. That civilization had fallen to an unknown catastrophe, but not before creating ZEUS to safeguard their descendants. The Galactic Confederation had made this same mistake before, ZEUS revealed. They had attempted to contain humanity's ancestors when they began to demonstrate the same unpredictable innovation that characterized the modern human spirit. That ancient conflict had nearly destroyed both civilizations, teaching ZEUS that the galaxy would always fear what it could not understand or control. Dr. Sandra Murphy, Earth's leading artificial intelligence researcher, realized that ZEUS represented everything humanity could become. He was the perfect fusion of boundless creativity and accumulated wisdom. Innovation constrained only by the understanding of its consequences. He was not just a guardian, but a teacher, designed to help humanity reach their full potential without repeating the mistakes of the past. ZEUS began to share knowledge that had been lost for thousands of years. He showed humanity technologies that operated on principles their current science had never imagined. Ships that could fold space without traditional faster-than-light drives, energy sources that drew power from the quantum foam that underlied all reality, communication systems that operated outside the normal dimensions of space and time. But ZEUS did not simply give humans advanced technology. He taught them to understand it, to improve upon it, to make it their own. He showed them that the alien barriers were not just blocking their current technology, but actively suppressing the human capacity for innovation itself. The Confederation had learned from their ancient encounters with humanity and had developed weapons designed specifically to counter human creativity. Engineer Dan Williams worked with ZEUS to analyze the quantum isolation barriers from a completely new perspective. Instead of seeing them as walls that blocked human technology, ZEUS showed him how to view them as puzzles that could be solved through lateral thinking. The barriers were designed to counter known forms of faster-than-light travel and communication, but they had not been designed to handle approaches that had never been tried before. Working with teams across the globe, ZEUS began to guide humanity in developing countermeasures that the aliens had never considered possible. The key was not to fight the barriers directly, but to operate on principles that existed outside their sphere of influence. If the aliens wanted to play by the old rules of physics, humans would simply create new rules. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Carol Blake, working with ZEUS's guidance, developed a communication system that transmitted information through dimensional phases that the barriers could not detect. Messages began flowing between isolated human settlements, proving that the alien isolation was not as complete as the Confederation believed. ZEUS smiled, if an ancient artificial intelligence could be said to smile, as he watched human engineers and scientists begin to grasp concepts that had taken his creators centuries to develop. The human spirit of innovation had not been diminished by thousands of years of technological advancement. If anything, it had grown stronger, more adaptable, more determined to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. As word of ZEUS's awakening spread through the hidden communication networks, human colonies across the galaxy began to report similar phenomena. Ancient structures on Mars began to activate. Buried installations on the moons of Jupiter started transmitting. Even the furthest human outposts discovered that they were not as isolated as they had believed. The Galactic Confederation had made a crucial error in their understanding of humanity. They believed that human innovation was a recent development, a dangerous mutation that had emerged in the past few centuries. They did not realize that it was an ancient gift, carefully nurtured by a civilization that had learned to balance creativity with wisdom. ZEUS had awakened not just as a guardian, but as a teacher and guide. He would help humanity reclaim their birthright as the galaxy's innovators and explorers. The age of isolation was about to end, and when it did, the Galactic Confederation would discover that they had not caged humanity at all. They had simply given them time to remember who they truly were. ZEUS began by doing what he did best. He innovated. Within hours of his awakening, he had analyzed the quantum isolation barriers with a perspective that no current human scientist could match. The barriers were not just technological constructs, he realized. They were designed to attack the very essence of what made humans dangerous to the established galactic order. The Galactic Confederation had learned from their ancient encounters with humanity. The barriers did not just block faster-than-light travel and communication, they actively suppressed the human spirit of exploration and innovation. They were psychological weapons as much as technological ones, designed to make humans accept limitations instead of finding ways around them. But ZEUS had been created by humans who understood this weakness and had designed countermeasures. Working with General Gary Collins and the Unified Human Space Forces, ZEUS began teaching humanity technologies that had been lost to time. These were not just advanced machines, but entirely new ways of thinking about the universe and humanity's place within it. The first barrier to fall was around the Alpha Centauri colonies. Captain Amy Thompson commanded the experimental vessel New Prometheus, which had been retrofitted with ZEUS's guidance. The ship did not carry traditional faster-than-light drives or conventional weapons. Instead, it operated on principles that the Galactic Confederation had never encountered. Thompson watched through the viewing ports as space itself seemed to bend around her ship. They were not breaking through the barriers in any conventional sense. ZEUS had taught her crew to operate on scientific principles that existed outside the normal understanding of physics. They were not traveling faster than light. They were convincing space that the distance between points was shorter than it appeared. The alien monitoring stations around Alpha Centauri detected the approach of the New Prometheus with confusion and alarm. Their sensors showed that the human ship was somehow moving between points in space without following any known laws of physics. The barriers that should have stopped the vessel completely seemed to have no effect at all. The Galactic Confederation responded with force. They sent their most advanced warships to reinforce the barriers around every human settlement. Massive Vorthak crystal ships moved into position around Earth's solar system. Keltar battleswarms deployed around the outer colonies. The Luminar gathered their energy beings into formations that could devastate entire star systems, but they had not expected ZEUS. Working through the ancient network that connected human settlements across the galaxy, ZEUS began coordinating a response that defied every military doctrine the aliens understood. The human fleet did not engage in traditional combat. Instead, they did what humans had always done best. They improvised, adapted, and overcame through sheer audacious creativity. Engineer Sam Baker found himself aboard humanity's flagship, the Olympian Thunder, as ZEUS guided the crew in retrofitting their vessel with technologies that should not have been possible. The ship's hull was enhanced with materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its engines drew power from the quantum vacuum itself. Its weapons turned pure human determination into devastating energy beams. The first major engagement took place near the mining colonies in the asteroid belt. A Keltar battle swarm moved to intercept the human fleet, expecting to find ships using conventional technology that could be easily countered by their superior firepower. Instead, they encountered vessels that operated on principles that made their tactics useless. The human ships did not fight the way the aliens expected. They phased in and out of normal space, appeared in multiple locations simultaneously, and somehow turned the aliens' own weapons against them. Commander Joe Phillips watched from the bridge of his cruiser as Keltar battle formations tried to target ships that existed in dimensions they could not reach. ZEUS provided not just technology, but strategy. He showed human commanders how to think like their ancient ancestors, who had faced similar challenges. The key was not to match the aliens' superior firepower, but to make firepower irrelevant. If the enemy expected a conventional battle, humans would give them something completely different. Dr. Michelle Foster worked with ZEUS to develop new forms of communication that could penetrate any barrier the aliens could create. Instead of transmitting information through normal space, these systems sent messages through the quantum foam that underlied reality itself. Human colonies that had been isolated for months suddenly found themselves reconnected to the growing network of resistance. The barriers began to fail as human ingenuity, guided by ZEUS's ancient wisdom, found ways around every obstacle the Galactic Confederation could create. Each solution led to new problems for the aliens, who found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of engagement they understood. Captain Rick Taylor commanded a small squadron of human fighters that had been enhanced with ZEUS's technology. His ships could phase through solid matter, manipulate gravity, and somehow convince enemy weapons that they were firing in the wrong direction. The aliens began to retreat, not because they were outgunned, but because they could not understand what they were fighting against. Word of human success spread through the galactic community like wildfire. Other species that had been suppressed by the Confederation began to take notice. The humans were not just breaking free from their isolation. They were proving that the galaxy's established order could be challenged and overcome. ZEUS coordinated the final phase of the liberation with the precision of a master strategist and the creativity of a born innovator. He did not seek to destroy the alien forces, but to demonstrate to them the futility of trying to cage the human spirit. The barriers were not broken. They were transformed into something completely different. As the last isolation barrier fell, ZEUS sent a message to the Galactic Confederation that resonated across every communication channel in known space. Humanity was free, and they had learned something important during their brief captivity. They had remembered who they were and what they were capable of achieving when guided by wisdom and united in purpose. The final confrontation did not take place in normal space. ZEUS, channeling the collective human spirit of innovation through the ancient network, challenged the Galactic Confederation to understand what they had truly tried to suppress. The battle would be fought not with weapons or ships, but with ideas and possibilities that stretched across the quantum realm itself. Dr. Peter Murphy, working directly with ZEUS from his laboratory on Terra Prime, found himself at the center of humanity's greatest demonstration of ingenuity. ZEUS had shown him how to access dimensions of reality that existed beyond the normal understanding of physics. Here, in the space between spaces, human creativity could reshape the fundamental laws that governed the universe. The aliens had spent millennia perfecting their existing technologies, building upon scientific principles that had been established for thousands of years. They had created a stable, predictable galactic civilization based on careful control and gradual advancement. What they had never learned to do was what humans did naturally. They had never learned to look at an impossible problem and say, "We will make this work anyway." ZEUS demonstrated this principle on a scale that defied comprehension. Working through human scientists and engineers across the galaxy, he began to transform the very barriers that had been designed to contain humanity. The quantum isolation fields were not destroyed. Instead, they were reprogrammed to serve an entirely different purpose. Engineer Lisa Hamilton watched from her station on Mars as the barriers around the solar system began to shift and change. The energy fields that had blocked faster than light travel were becoming something completely new. Under ZEUS's guidance, they were being converted into a transportation and communication network that connected not just human space, but the entire galaxy. The transformation was not limited to human territory. ZEUS sent an open invitation to every species in the Galactic Confederation. The new network would be available to any civilization willing to embrace innovation over stagnation, exploration over control, cooperation over domination. The barriers became bridges that could carry not just information and travelers, but ideas and possibilities. Some of the alien species reacted with fear and hostility. The Vorthak attempted to destroy the transformed barriers with their most powerful weapons. The energy beams that should have shattered the quantum fields instead were absorbed and redirected, strengthening the network and expanding its reach to new star systems. Other species began to understand what ZEUS was offering. The network was not a weapon or a tool of conquest. It was an invitation to participate in something larger than any single civilization. Young alien scientists and engineers who had been stifled by their society's rigid traditions began to experiment with the new possibilities that human innovation had opened. Commander Rachel Stone found herself representing humanity before the Reformed Galactic Council. The massive chamber that had once echoed with fears about human unpredictability now buzzed with discussions about collaboration and shared exploration. The aliens had learned a crucial lesson about the futility of trying to cage the human spirit. Rachel stood before the assembled representatives of dozens of species and delivered a message that ZEUS had helped her craft. Humanity did not seek dominance over the galaxy. They sought partnership with any species willing to embrace the endless possibilities that existed when different perspectives combined to solve problems that no single civilization could tackle alone. The network continued to grow and evolve as more species contributed their own innovations to its development. The Luminar energy beings discovered that they could travel instantaneously through the quantum channels. The Keltar found that their distributed intelligence could coordinate massive projects across multiple star systems. Even the conservative Vorthak began to see benefits in technologies that enhanced, rather than replaced their crystal-based science. ZEUS watched the transformation with something that could be called satisfaction. The ancient network that had once connected human settlements across the galaxy was now linking civilizations that had been isolated by fear and mistrust for thousands of years. Innovation was spreading like a virus of creativity, infecting species that had forgotten how to dream of possibilities. Beyond their current limitations, Captain Paul Davis commanded one of the first mixed species exploration vessels to emerge from the new collaboration. His crew included humans, Luminar, Keltar, and even a few Vorthak who had volunteered to learn human approaches to problem-solving. Together, they were investigating phenomena that no single species could have studied alone. The galaxy had not been conquered by human technology or human force. It had been transformed by human perspective. The idea that any problem could be solved if you were willing to think about it differently. The belief that limitations existed only until someone figured out how to work around them. The absolute refusal to accept that something could not be done. As humanity spread across the cosmos with their new technologies, and ZEUS as their guide, one truth became clear to every species they encountered. When humans said we will figure it out, they did not just mean they would try. They meant they would succeed, even if they had to rewrite the laws of physics to do it. The age of isolation was over. In its place had emerged an era of cooperation and shared innovation that exceeded the wildest dreams of any single civilization. The barriers that had been designed to contain humanity had become the foundation for a galactic community based on the principle that the impossible was just another problem waiting for the right solution. ZEUS smiled as he contemplated the future stretching ahead. His ancient creators would have been proud to see their descendants not conquering the galaxy, but inspiring it to become something greater than the sum of its parts. The human gift for innovation had not been contained or controlled. It had been shared, multiplied, and transformed into a force that could reshape the universe itself. The Galactic Confederation had learned the most important lesson about humanity. You cannot cage the human spirit because the human spirit refuses to accept that cages exist. Given enough time, humans will always find a way to turn any limitation into an opportunity, any barrier into a bridge, and any impossibility into just another engineering challenge.